do view the live stream. I have no idea who they are, but we're glad for them. So let's go to the scripture reading. From Psalm 24, the earth is the Lord's and all its fullness, the world and those who dwell therein. For he has founded it upon the seas and established it upon the waters. Who may ascend into the hill of the Lord, or who may stand in his holy place? He who has clean hands and a pure heart, who has not lifted up his soul to an idol, nor sworn deceitfully, he shall receive blessing from the Lord and righteousness from the God of his salvation. This is Jacob, the generation of those who seek him, who seek your face, Selah. Lift up your heads, O you gates, and be lifted up, you everlasting doors, and the King of glory shall come in. Who is this King of glory? The Lord, strong and mighty, the Lord, mighty in battle. Lift up your heads, O you gates, lift up, you everlasting doors, and the King of glory shall come in. Who is this King of glory? The Lord of hosts. He is the King of glory. Selah. Now I will just mention that nobody knows for sure what the word Selah means. It could be just take a rest or whatever. Nobody knows for sure, so sometimes we don't even bother to read it, but it's in the original Greek. Everybody seems to know the 23rd Psalm. It's a favorite of everybody's, but many fewer people know the 24th Psalm, which I love. And by the way, the part of the 24th Psalm is actually included in Handel's Messiah. The King of Glory. Who is this King of Glory? The Lord strong and mighty. So let's go back to what it says, and the reason why I think this is important is that we live in a world in which people have differing ideas as to man's relationship to the earth, as well as man's relationship to God and God's relationship to the earth. So it starts off and says, the earth is the Lord's. It makes it very plain. Unlike the gods of the heathen, in which they just occupied the heavens and the earth or whatever, it didn't belong to them. They would fight over who had rights over what. It was just a bunch of ridiculousness, but they didn't own it. And the earth belongs to God. And then it says, the fullness thereof, another translation that says everything it contains. There's nothing upon the earth, material, nothing living or non-living, that isn't part of God's possession. He owns it. And then you have to ask, well, what about man? And he says, well, the world. And when the Bible refers to the world, sometimes it means the globe, just as earth can sometimes mean the stuff that you shovel, but it can also mean the globe. And we have named our planet Earth because that's what the place was called since time immemorial. Long before people understood it as a planet, the ancients, the biblical writers, knew that the earth was an object placed in space by God, hung in space. But that's what he's saying is this belongs to God. And then when it says the world, in this phrase, it probably refers to the whole of humanity and all that's involved in it. He says the world and those who live in it. So we live in this world. So that's also saying that we as people belong to God. There are people who will say, I don't belong to anybody. I'm my own person. No, you belong to God. And there's a contest over ownership, and I'll be getting into that in a little bit, but that's something that needs to be known. There is a contest over ownership. And I understand some of this thing. Right now, I am involved in a legal dispute over the ownership of a piece of property. Somebody started putting posted signs on my property, and they're claiming that because the county moved the county line, that now they own my property. And that's going to be a big dispute that's been going on for a couple of years, actually. So the same thing is going on in the heavenly realms. A big contest over ownership, not so much about the earth, but the world and those who live in it. Now, the psalmist says, why? He founded it upon the seas, established it upon the waters. Now, you might be thinking, why doesn't it go further back than that? Probably because the whole idea of the earth rising above the seas, he founded it upon the seas. By the way, it turns out there's more water in the crust of the earth underneath everything than there is in the oceans. That's an amazing thing to learn, but there is more. It's all intermixed with other stuff, so you wouldn't recognize it right away. He said he established it upon the waters. So we have this whole thing of ownership and who owns what, and I want to get back to a man's place in it. We know that in Genesis, God planted a garden. It's his garden. But he put man in it to tend it, to do things with it. And that's a very important aspect. We as human beings have been given the job of tending the earth. It may not belong to us, but it is our responsibility. And then, not only do we have responsibility over the earth, the environment, we are responsible for how we deal with it, but we're also have been given dominion over all other living things. It's stated very plainly. So we have a situation where God owns it, but he's put man in charge of it in many ways, and that's our relationship. We belong to him, we're his servants, and we have been given responsibilities. This whole idea of ownership, though, becomes confused at times, because at times people are in a situation, they are inhabiting someplace to the point that even though they own it, they act like they own it and they think they own it. And they behave as though they own it. And then sometimes they have to be told, you don't own this. I have had some issues in that regard with some of the things that I have, where people just begin to think because they've had use of it for so long that somehow they have ownership of it. And it's interesting how this goes. All of you know that I like to write some music. And not long ago I gave a piece of music to somebody to work on an orchestrate, and they invested quite a bit of time in it. And I started talking about rights of copyright and other things, and you have all this. How does that work? Can I put this out there with your orchestration? And the response is, the law is pretty clear on that. It's your music. It belongs to you. You can do with it what you want. You can change my orchestration. You can do anything you want. It's your music. And, when it comes to the earth, just because we've been on this earth forever, it seems, doesn't mean that we own it. On the other hand, it doesn't own us either. But let's go on. He says, who may ascend into the hill of the Lord? Who may stand in his holy place? Now, at this point, he is talking about the idea of going up to a place of worship, but certainly it has implications as far as our entrance into heaven. But he says, who can stand in his holy place? His answer is, he who has clean hands and a pure heart. Now let's just back up. Some people think that there's an expression, there's an expression in the Bible which is cleanliness is next to godliness. Anybody ever hear that? Raise your hand, nod, whatever. Yeah. Cleanliness is next to godliness. I've had people say, well, as the good book says, and I've had to tell them the good book doesn't say that. And while in the Jewish religion, the Old Testament, they had to wash their hands frequently, and we know that there's a good hygienic reason for that. When he says this about clean hands, he's not talking about dirt on your fingers or under your fingernails. Clean hands means you haven't used your hands to do evil. Now, or do mischief, or however you want to describe it. You have not been guilty of these things. There is a legal issue in which when people go to court and seek relief from the court against another individual, that if you come to court, you have to come with, quote, clean hands. In other words, if you say, that guy has my money, I want it back. And the judge said, well, where did you get the money from? I robbed it from the bank. You can't get the court to say, okay, so-and-so who robbed him, you've got to give it back to him who did the robbery. You can't get something, any relief from the courts. Judgment is against people who don't have clean hands. And we can look all around the globe and you see people who've done wrong things and they expect God to help them out. And he also says, and a pure heart. Because even if you have, quote, clean hands, you didn't do what's wrong, in your heart there's malice, there's envy. In your heart there's a willingness, a desire to do wrong. And he said, if you've either done wrong or even wanted in your heart to do wrong, you can't stand before God. He says, you haven't lifted up your soul to an idol. Now, what does that mean, to lift up your soul to an idol? It means literally to go to some deity or what you think is a deity and try and get that deity to help you out. And it may not be an actual deity, it's some kind of replacement for God. I'm not getting what I want from God, so I'm going to go to someone who'll do that for me. You know, it's kind of like the adult version of the childish game, where a kid asks his dad, can I do something? Go ask your mother. Mom, can I do something? Go ask your dad. You know, they pass the buck. Or to get told by one parent and then go to ask the other parent without saying, Dad said no. Mom, can I do this? And most kids think that mom's more of a soft touch than dad. And the mom will say yes. And this happens frequently. In fact, it's a kind of an automatic dad answer to say no. And then they could figure out later whether or not you should have said no. But anybody who has this approach towards God shouldn't expect to receive anything from God. And there are many people that do that. And then he says, nor sworn deceitfully. I'll tell you what, I watch people swear deceitfully all the time. They're known as politicians. They raise their hand, I promise to defend and uphold the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and so help me God, whatever. And you know in their heart of hearts that they don't intend to do that. They have no issue. I swear that I will uphold the laws of the country, and then they get into office and they purposely violate the very laws they said they would uphold. It happens all the time. But regular people, I've seen people say, I swear on my mother's grave. As soon as somebody says that, I'm pretty sure that they really did or didn't do the thing that they said. You know, they're doing this, and That's a deceitful swearing. It's making a promise. It's making a promise like a, what do they call it? Pinky swear, whatever. You know, blood brother things, whatever people have tried to do to show that they really, 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 really mean it. Whatever people do for the purpose of deceiving you. And we know that that's happened all the time. I see in history how many times population has been told by some leader, if you put me into power, I will change things. And you will have all these good things if you just let me run everything. And you think about places like how Lenin and Stalin did to Russia. You take a look at what happened in China, where the people were promised. You look at Venezuela, the people were promised. And I don't care where you go, if somebody promises the population that they're going to have something if they will only trust, that's swearing deceitfully. But it happens at a very personal level too. It's unfortunate but true that sometimes children of parents make promises about their behavior that they don't intend to keep, and tragedy often results. Sometimes it's between spouses, and there's a rupture of trust because of that. He says, anybody who has done these things are in trouble, but the person who has clean hands, a pure heart, hasn't lifted up on a soul, hasn't sworn deceitfully, it says, he shall receive blessing from the Lord. And this is true. God looks for reasons to bless people, and if he can find a reason to bless them, he does. I was telling my granddaughters a story from my childhood. We were on our way to watch the fireworks. They would have a band and then fireworks, and we'd gone a couple of times before, and we were on our way there, and my two kid brothers started bickering and fighting with one another in the back seat. And my dad said, stop it, or we're not going to the fireworks. And they didn't stop it. And he turned around, and we didn't go to the fireworks that year. Of course, my sisters and I were like, what did we do? How come we couldn't see the fireworks? But that's the way it goes. You don't get blessing from the Lord when you've been behaving badly. But here's something much more important. It says, he shall receive blessing from the Lord and righteousness from the God of his salvation. So let's first identify, he doesn't just say righteousness from God, from the God of his salvation. We have to recognize that that's one thing that's really important about our relationship with God. He's the God that saves us. And apart from him, there is no salvation. As we see when Peter spoke on the day of Pentecost, there is salvation in none other. So, but the idea that we receive righteousness is the idea that God doesn't save us and say, okay, so you're not going to die, you're not going to be punished. He also sees us as righteous. When somebody who's done a crime, and everybody knows they've done a crime, receives a pardon from the people who can do that, we look at them and say, well, they got out of jail. Well, we don't think they're a righteous person, because they're not. But God says, I will declare you righteous if you behave like this, if you are this way. Let's go on. He then says, this is Jacob, referring to himself and his generation. He said, this is Jacob. And you wonder, what? You have to recognize that before David, and I'm not sure if David actually wrote this, I should have checked that out, that many of the Israelites were seeking other people. They were seeking other idols. He says, this is Jacob, the generation of those who seek him. And you say, what about Jacob? What's Jacob? Why not? This is Israel, but it's Jacob. And the reason is because when Jacob, who had sworn deceitfully, when Jacob, who had did not have clean hands in the whole thing with regard to Esau, Jacob swore deceitfully to Isaac to receive a blessing. When Jacob was on his way out of town fleeing for his life, God met him with a dream of, we call it Jacob's ladder. But then Jacob said, God, if that's you, God was here and I didn't know it, but God, if you'll be with me, I'll give you 1/10 of everything I earn. He was trying to maybe buy favor from God at that point, I'm not sure, but it showed some kind of faith, if you'll bless me. And he went on and God blessed him with a wife and wealth and everything else. But this generation of people at the time of the psalmist were people who were beginning to seek God's face again. I am praying that the current generation, not those of us who are, who are advanced in years, but the younger generation, I pray that they become the Jacob generation, those who maybe didn't start off right, but now they're going to seek for God. They're going to seek his face. And it's very important. It says, we seek your face. There's a huge difference between seeking for somebody and seeking their face. When you seek their face, the whole idea of face-to-face contact. They were saying, we want to come and we want to have a conversation with you. That's why you have face-to-face meetings, to have conversation. And you can go, there's a letter, or in today's world, the email, the text message, and it can, the meanings of what people say can be misconstrued. It's better to have a voice conversation because you can then hear the inflection and the tone and everything else to understand a person. But there's nothing like face-to-face, where you can see the little lines on somebody's face that either indicates approval or disapproval or delight or disgust, which can't be hidden from the face, even if it is from the words. Saying, we want a face-to-face meeting. We want that. I have a song that I just love. I forget how long ago it's been written. Face to face with Christ my Savior. Face to face, what will it be when with rapture I behold him? So this whole idea is we want that kind of relationship with God that's face to face. That's the kind of people we need to be, not the kind of people who try to advance in our ways by doing things the wrong way. Now we have this expression, be lifted up, you everlasting doors, and the King of glory shall come in. Well, here's an interesting thing. Generally, doors you open. You don't lift them up. You open doors. What do you lift up? You lift up your head. But he says, lift up your heads, O you gates. So gates have heads? That's what it's saying. So you get the idea that these are not literal gates. They're some kind of gate. And as you go on, you would have to conclude that these are the doors to heaven that are swinging open. But heaven is not like earth that has physical things. These gates are something that are animate. These gates, if you have a head, it means that you have control, that there's consciousness. So the entrance into heaven is not gained by or capped out by some inanimate object, but it is some kind of thing that opens the doors, and it isn't St. Peter. He said, lift him up, and the King of glory shall come in. The next question is this. Who's the King of glory, or the glorious King? He gives an answer. The Lord. And this is Yahweh. In this translation, it would be Yahweh. The Lord, strong and mighty. The Lord, mighty in battle. So here we have an interesting thing. Is that he could have said, the Lord all sufficient, the Lord our keeper. He doesn't say that. He's strong and he's mighty. And you need that because of the battle. He said, the Lord mighty in battle. What's the battle? The battle is over who owns the earth and all it contains. The battle is over who owns the world and all the people that dwell therein. Remember that Satan took Jesus up to the high temple and said, bow down and worship me, and I will give you all the kingdoms of the world. It's like, but they belong to Jesus anyhow. Satan is a squatter. God cast him down to the earth, and ever since he got here, he thinks that he has a right to run everybody, and he takes possession of human hearts. People, when they disobey God, when they do the things that they shouldn't be doing, are serving Satan, whether they know it or not. And because they become his servants, there's this battle that's going on. As the song says, there's a battle raging in the heavenly places, sin and death and sickness, with Satan leading on. With all the hosts of hell arrayed against us, how in all our weakness shall the victory be won? It says Jesus gives us the victory. But there's this battle that goes on, and we need to understand it when we see the deceits of people infecting our land and causing our young people to believe lies. Those are deceits of Satan. There's no question that the teachings of atheism, the teachings of evolution, the teachings of Marxism, of humanism, all these things started by Satan. He's the one that whispered the ideas into certain people's heads and got them to take root. And we see this all over the place. Satan wages his battles by lying and deceiving. He is the deceiver, he is the liar, and he lies and deceives. And our whole world has succumbed to the lies and deceits of Satan unless the God of truth has worked in us. So it's a battle, and we have to recognize that there is a great battle for the hearts and minds of men. He repeats the refrain, lift up your heads, O you gates. Lift up, you everlasting doors. He repeats it, the King of glory shall come in. Who is this King of glory? The Lord of hosts. This time he doesn't say the Lord mighty in battle. He says the Lord of hosts. What are the hosts? The hosts are all the angelic beings, and I believe also the redeemed of the Lord on the earth. He has us. And it's not that he has his strength because of all the hosts. All the hosts get their strength from him. It's not like in human armies, whatever, where the general has his strength because of all the people down there fighting for him. They get their strength from their leader. And we receive our strength, and all the hosts of God receive their strength from the King of glory. But there's one more thing to ask about this. When? This doesn't say when this is going to happen. And I believe it actually has already happened and will happen again. We know that when Jesus died, it says he descended to the lower parts of the earth. We believe he descended into hell, is the way the Creed calls it. And there, according to the Apostle Paul, there he defeated Satan. There he took spoils. Those who are the blessed dead before his crucifixion, resurrection, were raised to heavenly places. And he made a spoil of death. He, by himself, won the victory. And he entered heaven with a great following behind him. He's there now, seated at the right hand of the Father, making intercession for us. But there will come a time when he will come one more time in order to establish his rightful claim over this earth, when Satan will be banished. Satan will no longer be able to deceive. He'll no longer be able to go out and destroy and devour. The ownership of the earth, the ownership of the world and all it contains and all who live in it will finally be perfectly established. And when that happens, and Jesus returns a second time to heaven, he'll take his seat on that eternal throne and reign forever and ever. Let's pray. Father, I thank you for your word. I thank you for all the blessings that we receive from it. And I pray, Lord, that you would help us to be people who understand the world we live in and what is going on in our world. And help us, Lord, to live lives that have clean hands and pure hearts and are not deceitful. Lord, help us to be your children.